The moment Tarvanya saw Daniel clumsily stumble into the intergalactic bar on the asteroid hub of Eos Prime, she could tell he was trouble. Humans always were. Their wide-eyed curiosity and lack of self-preservation often led them into situations they had no business being in. Daniel, however, seemed especially naive. He carried himself with the awkward confidence of someone too stubborn to recognize he didn't belong. She watched as he approached the bar, narrowly avoiding a scaly six-legged brawny, and ordered something earthly like a beer. When he finally noticed her across the bar, his face lit up. She rolled her eyes. Another lovesick human dazzled by her violet skin and bioluminescent freckles. "You're not from around here," Daniel said, sliding onto the stool next to her. "Very astute," she said dryly. "What gave it away?" "The antennae?" "Partly," he said with a grin. "But mostly it was the way you're ignoring everyone else in this bar." "That's confidence." Tarvanya chuckled. "Confidence or a lack of interest?" "Could be both," Daniel said, leaning in slightly. "I'm Daniel. And you are?" "Amused," she replied, taking a sip of her glowing drink. They bantered for a while, Daniel's humor slowly breaking through her defenses. She didn't quite know why she entertained his chatter. Maybe it was the sheer novelty of someone who seemed genuinely fascinated by her rather than intimidated. Eventually, the conversation turned to her home planet, Lyris, a lush, vibrant world known for its exotic flora. "Sounds incredible," Daniel said, resting his chin in his hand. "What's the rarest flower there?" Tarvanya smirked. "The Lumisara Bloom. It grows once every 100 years at the peak of Mount Vera, surrounded by firestorms and razor winds. It's impossible to reach." Daniel's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Impossible, huh?" She laughed. "Why?" "Planning a visit." "Maybe," he said, a playful challenge in his voice. "If I brought you one, what would you do?" She raised an eyebrow, leaning closer. "If you somehow survived and brought me a Lumisara Bloom, I'd marry you on the spot." It was meant as a joke, of course. Humans couldn't possibly survive the trek to Mount Vera, much less retrieve the flower. But Daniel's grin widened, and Tarvanya felt a pang of unease. "Challenge accepted," he said, draining the rest of his drink. Tarvanya didn't think much of their encounter after he left. Humans were dramatic creatures, prone to making ridiculous promises they couldn't keep. Weeks passed, and life moved on. Then, one morning, the hub's news feeds exploded with the story of a human attempting the impossible. Earthling Daniel Hayes embarks on legendary quest to retrieve Lumisara Bloom, the headlines blared. Tarvanya nearly dropped her cup of nectar ale. He wouldn't, but he did. The journey to Mount Vera was as dangerous as the legends described. Firestorms raged across the landscape, and the air itself seemed to fight intruders. But Daniel, armed with nothing but determination and a heavily modified exosuit, pressed on. He faced venomous wildlife, gale-force winds, and his own doubts. Each step was grueling, but the thought of Tarvanya's amused smirk spurred him forward. He didn't know if she'd meant her promise, but he wasn't about to let that stop him. When he finally reached the summit, battered and bruised, the Lumisara Bloom awaited him. Its petals shimmered with an otherworldly light, and its fragrance seemed to sing. Clutching the bloom like a trophy, he began the treacherous descent. Weeks later, the door to Tarvanya's workshop slid open with a hiss. She looked up from her tools, and her jaw dropped. There stood Daniel, covered in soot and scars, holding the Lumisara Bloom. "You actually did it," she whispered wide-eyed. "Told you I would," he said, grinning through his exhaustion. Tarvanya took the flower from him, her hands trembling. "Do you have any idea what you've done? This flower is priceless. Entire syndicates have died trying to get it." Daniel shrugged. "You said it was the rarest." I figured you deserved the best." She stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, to his surprise, she burst out laughing. "You're insane. You know that," she said, her laughter fading into a warm smile. "Maybe," he said, stepping closer. "But a deal's a deal." Tarvanya hesitated, then sighed. "You humans really are something else?" She extended a hand. "All right, Daniel. Let's see where this goes." From that day on, the legend of the human who won the heart of a Lyran with the rarest flower in the galaxy became a tale told in bars across Eos Prime. And Daniel? He never regretted a single step of the journey.